Hello there. My name is Andrew Romero, and this is the Out of Office Chat, where I talk about life outside the office. And today I'd like to chat about mindfulness. That's right, the big M, y'all. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Before we get into it, how are y'all doing? I hope y'all are doing okay. It's getting a bit nippy out here in the Midwest. It snowed, I believe, last week. I was not prepared for that. I like the fall weather. I like the ability to layer up, layer down. But snow, it just hits different. And although I enjoy it to some degree, I wasn't ready for it this year. It wasn't that much. I think it was predicted to snow like 12 inches. Maybe an inch or so fell. So it could have been worse. In any case, what have I been up to? Well, last time we chatted, I said I was going to go watch the Predator film, and guess what, y'all? I did. And guess what, y'all? I was very underwhelmed. You know what? It was cool. I see what they were trying to do. They were trying to make it so that it was a little bit more kid-friendly, but that came at the expense of my enjoyment. I was expecting a rated R film. It was PG-13. I didn't know that. I should have done my research before going in. But I think I mentioned it. I don't watch trailers. I don't really look up movies. If I know I'm going to watch something, I'm going to go watch it. Forget about the trailer. Forget about any kind of like a description. But I guess that was my fault. I should have looked at the rating there. In any case, we also celebrated my son's birthday. My eldest turned 5. He's half a decade old, y'all. Time flies. I wish I can slow it down just a little bit longer, but he's on his way. He's learning the best he can. Being a little person, being a little human being, and we celebrated having a little. Oh my God! If y'all want a challenge, and if you want to really, 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 really challenge yourself, throw a birthday party. Throw a birthday party for a 5-year-old. It might be a good starter birthday party. It's so stressful running around, making sure you accommodated everyone, making sure you got food, the drinks. I mean, we had a play space. It wasn't as if it was alcoholic drinks. Regardless, it was stressful nonetheless. So it's okay though. He had a ton of fun. He looked like he enjoyed himself. He actually said thank you to everybody. It was really adorable. And we're actually going on vacation this weekend. So yay! I'll let you know where we go maybe next episode. But in any case, let's get started. Let's just hop right into it. Mindfulness. Let's start with a definition, y'all. What is mindfulness? What does that mean? The best I can describe it is mindfulness is a state of awareness, i.e. being present. And of course, there's an offshoot and effect on kind of your meditative practices, which we'll dovetail in a moment. But the definition, a state of awareness, it's a lot to unpack. So this is what I'm going to do. So when I think about mindfulness, I think about it in two terms, internal and external. Internal being things that are happening to your faculties, whether it be your thoughts, your mental processes, your state of emotions, your physical being, like what are you doing physically. When I say external awareness, it's more around kind of your environmental and your situational conditions and circumstances. It could be when you're walking into a room, who's in the room, what smells are you picking up, what's the noise, That's what I mean. So internally, things that are happening, in your head, in your emotions, physically to yourself, as well as externally, what's going on around you. I will preface this. It's gonna get a little spiritual, y'all. And I don't typically like to go down this road, but you know what? It's a fun exercise for me because I get to kind of lay it all there in terms of what I've been practicing over the last couple of years, why it's significant, and tying it back to mindfulness. I think it's going to be a fun trip, y'all. So what I found and what I've read is that being mindful, being present, being there at the moment, it is meant to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. Now, I have a couple of stats here. I'm just going to throw it at you before I get into some personal experiences. The British Journal of Health Psychology, they surveyed approximately 200 adults from 91 countries, and what they found after some mindfulness exercises, and I believe this was done through an application, or an app, they found that depression was reduced 19% after mindfulness was practiced, improved to well-being increased around 7%, and anxiety decreased 12.5%. Pretty cool, huh? Not bad for mindfulness. Now, Mount Sinai Health System, they had a study on meditation and its impact to brain activity, and they found that short-term meditation, around 10%, it produced some positive changes in brain activity, especially those tied to emotion and memory. pretty cool. Now, it's something that I think when we talk about mindfulness, we think wooish concepts. We think, oh, you have to be into yoga, you have to be some sort of guru. And I am here to tell y'all that is not the case. So my story with mindfulness, it started way back when in 2024. It was prior to the birth of my second son. I was trying to get better at meditating. So I was Googling, I was looking at Audible, looking through the library. What can I find that would help me with my meditative practices? Now, this is for me to help reduce stress. So I've heard it reduce stress. So I was like, let me go ahead and see what I find out there. I came across a book called 10% Happier by Dan Harris. Dan Harris is an American journalist who discovered meditation after binging a whole bunch of drugs and alcohol. And he actually had a breakdown on air. You should Google it. Dan Harris Breakdown Live. It's pretty wild, pretty cool. But Dan Harris wrote this book after trying to find a way to manage his stress levels. And I'll let you pick it up on your own. The meat and potatoes of this is when he ended up going to a meditative retreat and had his first exposure to deep mindfulness. It's a silent retreat, and it sounds so nice. After two kids, like running around in a two-bedroom apartment, like, you sign me up. If I get a chance, sign me up. Send me to that silent retreat. But in the retreat itself, they encouraged all participants to walk as slowly as possible, but they forbade, I think that's a word, any talking at all. So they would basically practice just observing the movements of their body, all the while minimizing any stimuli that have been brought by conversation. And this is my first exposure to meditation methods. First and foremost is focusing on the breath. I knew it was tied to the breath, but I really didn't know how to apply it. And then Dan Harris did a phenomenal job breaking down how he did it. So focusing on the breath, what your breath does to your body. In my case, I typically practice mindfulness and meditation before I go to bed. And I think it's a good practice because, one, if you don't succeed with finding mindfulness, you get really relaxed, which is great before bed. Or two, you just, fall asleep, which is not a bad thing either. It helps with sleep. And it's a good starting point because, again, you focus on the breath. You see what the inhaling and exhaling does across your body. Where does it impact movement? So you inhale, exhale, you feel your chest going up, feel your chest going down. Dan Harris also mentioned, and I started applying, is monitoring where you feel parts of your body. Where's the tension? Where can you relax even further? So again, laying down in bed, it allows me to at least focus in my tippy toes, work its way up, making sure that each level of my body is as relaxed as possible. Again, focus on your breath first and foremost. Identify movement caused by the breath. But then once you got a good handle of the ups and downs, focus on all your muscles. Which ones are tensed up? And you know what's funny? When I'm driving or walking and I remind myself, focus on your breath, but focus on your muscles as well, I always go straight to my face. I don't know why, but my face is like all tensed up. That's a good thing to call out, because you want to avoid those wrinkles. So you detense your face. You'd be surprised how often I'm tensed up in the face or even my toes, right? So be cognizant, be aware, be mindful of what's tensed up, what your body's doing. And another thing I think I struggle with that Dan Harris did a phenomenal job around is when your thoughts go astray, always bring it back to your breath. Now, in my case, I might be thinking to myself, okay, I'm breathing. Oh, I got to do this. Oh, no, bring it back. Just bring it back to your breath. Don't worry about it. And Dan Harris put it in a good perspective. He asked his mentor during the retreat, what do I do? What do I do when my thoughts go astray? And I think that's a really awesome question because I think a lot of us, we overreact, we get angry, we have these negative pent-up emotions, and we're left with, well, what do we do now? Where do we go from here? And the director of the retreat told Dan Harris, just move on. Forgive yourself and move on. Go back to the exercises. Go back to breathing. And it's easier said than done, but it's true. When something's happened, it's already happened. All you can do is move forward and go back to the mindfulness state. So I have a story here. A couple of years ago, I was meditating. I began to focus on my breath. And the other thing I do, and maybe you want to do it, maybe you don't want to do it, is see if you can find your heartbeat. It's almost mesmerizing. So my wife was pregnant with our firstborn. She must have been like 8 or 9 months pregnant. And it got to the point where I was meditating, my hand was on her belly, and I was breathing in and out. And what's cool was I was in check of my heartbeat. And then all of a sudden, I feel my son kick through my wife's belly. And it was even more pronounced because keep in mind that I was already in the flow of my heartbeat. So I was going bum, 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 bum. And then I felt my son's feet, bum, bum. So it was a little bit out of rhythm and it felt that much more pronounced, right? It was really cool. I was way more mindful and aware of the environment. And for him to kick as I was meditating and I was breathing, it was just surreal. I think something that I'm going to carry with me for forever and ever. So, yeah, if you get a chance, read 10% Happier. It's actually a really cool introduction to meditation, but also mindfulness. And I will say Dan Harris does a phenomenal job at making it relevant and easily consumable. But this is not it, y'all. So over the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot of reading across different genres, I guess, in this kind of space. So another book I picked up that is, I feel like a really cool connection was called Walking with Grandfather, The Wisdom of Lakota Elders by Joseph M. Marshall III. In this book, Joseph chronicles his dialogues, his conversations with his grandfather. And at one point, his grandfather was talking to him on how to best talk with spirit, how to have a relationship with spirit. I guess in one way, the creator, the universe. One of the things his grandfather says is ask for a message from spirit, but be open to listening to the message from spirit. Now, I think this is important, y'all. Mindfulness, what it does is it makes you aware of everything that's around you, right? I would say mindfulness actually improves any messages that come through from spirit, that come through from the universe. And at one point, I will share this story. I think it's so significant. I think it's really wild. I was on an errand for the business, right? I was driving, and I decided, you know what? Let me ask. Well, first it says, be grateful. And that's what I did. I showed appreciation, gratitude. And then I let whoever was listening, let them know that I'm open to receiving any kind of messages. So there I go, park the car. I'm walking. And then out of nowhere, I see a rat walk up right next to my left foot and then go right in front of me. Like it was saying, excuse me, slowpoke. And then it just went right off into the bushes. At first, my heart started beating like crazy. I was like, whoa, that was wild. That was insane. But this is Chicago, there's a lot of rats in the city. So I got back into my car. I was like, thank you for the message. I was like, just to be sure, can you send me another message? Just in case, just in case that was nothing, that was something random. Anywho, I parked my car. And so I get out of my car and I look over to the fence where there's some flowers. And right there in the corner is a rat on its 2 feet, hovered next to the gate like it's been caught, looking dead at me, y'all. That to me was wild. My situation with the rats, I think it was more pronounced because I was actually really mindful. I was trying to be as cognizant about my movements, my surroundings, the noises, the smells, and I was hyper aware. And for that to happen, it felt more pronounced, right? Now, y'all may be wondering, Edwin, this is Chicago, all right? There's rats. It's a coincidence. And that's what I keep hearing, y'all. It's a coincidence. Nothing more than that. Although you can see it as a coincidence, I want to go back to this idea of like the creator, the creator, the universe, spirit, God, whatever it is that you want to associate with. If they are truly inside everything, everywhere, all at once, well, you know what? Coincidences aren't so random. There's meaning behind them. There is purpose behind them. I think it may seem random because sometimes we're preoccupied with 1,000 other things going on. And we may not draw those conclusions. If I were to have been so busy and then I forget about mindfulness throughout the day, I would have been like, oh, rats, And that's not what happened. There was a strong connection after my attempt to talk to the universe. And it was pretty wild. But going back into coincidences really quickly, I think I talked about it a couple of episodes ago, episode 19, around synchronicities. I think if we're not being mindful, then we're actually doing ourselves a disservice because we're neglecting or overlooking some of the signs from God, Spirit, the universe. And mindfulness actually helps you get more attuned to those types of signs. In episode 19, I covered off Carl Jung. He was really into synchronicities and the study of synchronicities, which are just more amplified emotional coincidences. And what he said was synchronicities are just signs from the universe's subconscious. It's trying to speak to us. And that's why I use the universe. But you might use God. You might use a spirit. You might use something else. It might just be our reality's subconscious trying to tell us something, trying to hint us towards a direction. And again, these are all things that you might miss if you aren't being mindful. I think in today's age, it's hard. It's hard to be mindful, y'all. It's hard to be present. It's hard to be in the now. You have responsibilities, always thinking about this afternoon, tomorrow, whenever, your work, your family. On top of that, you have the news. The news, y'all. The news, especially social media, I feel like it's meant to bog you down, meant to derail you, to distract you, and induce anxiety. Again, to pull you away from a mindful state. Now, what can you do? What can y'all do? I think first and foremost, focusing on the breath. But you know what I've been doing, y'all? I think I mentioned this a couple episodes ago. I carry a notebook. With me to capture a lot of my lingering thoughts, whether they're negative or positive or just neutral, just inspiration. I think what it does to me is it takes something that is mental or emotional and it makes it physical. And I take that energy and put it into a little notebook. That's what I recommend. I also recommend, if you're trying to be mindful, I don't know where to start. Do it when you're going to bed. I think, like I mentioned, we all sleep. If you have so many thoughts racing, you're going to be up already. Might as well try to control those thoughts before you go to bed. Best thing that can happen is, you get some relaxation, albeit you're awake. So that's my foray into mindfulness, y'all. I think a lot of this, though, is life is a lot bigger than what we see on screen, what we're told. I think the fabric of reality is, I started getting into some really wild topics over the last couple of years. And a lot of it, y'all, is rooted in mindfulness. Whether it be being aware of situation, whether it be being mindful of certain circumstances or routes, being present has been amazing. I talk about this right now because I think I've mentioned it a couple times where I miss doing some of my meditation. I really do at night. I stretch a lot, and I think stretching is also a really good opportunity to practice your mindfulness exercises. I still practice mindfulness, but I do miss the ability to be as mindful as I was when I saw those rats. With that, I hope this has helped y'all get a good introduction into mindfulness. Give it a shot, and if you do, let me know. Thank you so much for joining me, y'all. I really appreciate it. And until the next one, take care, y'all.